Welcome to this week's episode of L.I.F.T.S. This week, it's just you and I, Mo. We're on our own.
It is, but we've got some really interesting things to cover. I'm actually coming out of a conference here in New York on media and technology. So hopefully I found the quietest place in the hotel lobby to record this.
So you've got. I think you upset a lot of Pilates people last week with your comments about injuring yourself by doing Pilates. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. One, I am really thankful for anyone who's listening, all the people who reached out to me. I don't know if they were concerned for me or wanted to correct me on a potential injury. So if you are listening and you did not listen to the last week's episode, which was the Beyond Active recap, I pulled my groin, which I thought was from doing solid core while I was at Beyond Active. It was the back half of the week. At the same time that week, though, I also ran about 40 miles. I just ended up running a lot that week with a whole bunch of people that were at the conference. Well, after mentioning that on the podcast, and again, I do love solid core, a lot of Pilates, and by a lot, I'm talking about 15 to 20 people reached out and said, Samo, it's really hard to have the injury that you said you had from doing Pilates movements. You probably, had it happen to something else. I spoke to people who are much smarter than you and I, Matthew, as it relates to getting injured. And I think the diagnosis is that I just increased my running mileage um, too fast, too quickly. The good news is that those same people coached me back on recovery. And now I'm well on my way to feeling a lot better. In fact, I did my first run outside here in New York. I did a good 4 miles this morning and feeling much better.
So after that, you kind of destroyed the Pilates business by criticizing it, and now you're having to sort of make it up.
I'm pretty sure it'll be just fine. And I don't know if we're talking about Pilates or not today, but if it had a boom and if the boom is now a bust, I am sorry for all of you.
Yeah. So you're just this disclaimer at the bottom.
But no, I feel
Well,
much better. Yeah.
So what's the first story then we've got this week? Are you
Well,
going
the
to read
first
this
one
one,
we
Mo?
have, I think I can read this one. The first one is someone who is, I'm in New York today, but I'm based in the DMV area, which stands for DC, Maryland, Virginia, for those of you who are not from the area. Josh Harris acquires OneLife Fitness. And for a lot of us in the DMV area, we have heard of the name Josh Harris because a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, he acquired the Washington Commanders from a very unpopular owner named Dan Snyder. So the Washington Commanders are also on a great run. They are 4-1 at the time of this recording with a rookie quarterback, just doing great. And what he did is through his private equity firm, 26 North Partners, who were already invested in One Life Fitness, he went ahead and acquired One Life Fitness. And One Life Fitness has been a very fast growing gym brand. I don't want to say high value, low price because it is really high value at a really good price. There's actually a couple which are very close to me. And yeah, it just continues to show that his investment in the DC area. And the other interesting thing is, last week we talked about L. Catterton acquiring Solid Core. So here's another private equity firm coming in, investing in physical in-person fitness, followed by this week with George Harrison and 26 North acquiring all of One Life Fitness. So I think it's really good news for the industry.
Do you know anything about 26 North? Is this are they, do they focus in this particular category or is it a new sort of type of investment for them? Or don't you know?
I'm not as familiar with them. I do know that they are very active in physical experiences, not so much in digital. But I don't know enough about them, but I'm sure we will learn more in the coming weeks.
Okay. Right. Well, the next story then. This was an interesting one, and it came up. It came up on my feed this morning. So this is Weight Watchers, and I've been following a couple of stories because just a few weeks ago there was an article which was on Business Insider. Basically, I think Oprah Winfrey. So she was on the board. I think made a decision to step off. I think the share price had gone down quite significantly, and then the previous CEO seemed to be seem to be talking about investing in I think what they call clinical weight loss, which, without saying it was getting involved in GLP-1, it sounded as though this was the direction that she was suggesting getting involved in, and then she exits the organization, and then there's this statement which I think came out today, which is certainly increased their share price by saying that they're now going to get involved in the providing GLP-1. So it's an interesting story. Obviously, there's a lot going on within that organization by the sound of things. Interesting move. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, in 2023, Weight Watchers, with the former CEO Seema, acquired a company called Sequence, and Sequence prescribed clinical GLP-1 prescriptions virtually. And the idea behind this, I think, was really twofold. One, clearly, the expectation is that if you were on GLP-1 drug, then you might not need Weight Watchers. And that actually is what's been happening, is people have been getting on Ozempic and Wegovy and other GLP-1 drugs, and they're losing weight so fast without getting on a Weight Watchers program and having to count points. What this new news did, and Seema had since left the organization, I think largely due to how the company has been performing. What they're doing now, because the prescription drugs have been in short supply, they're now offering the non-prescription version. These are the compounded semaglutide drugs that they're now offering to their members as well. We'll see if this helps. I mean, ultimately, they're going to have to figure out a better way to handle this new reality that we're facing, and this impacts, Matthew, to gyms as well, right? If you have a large,
well, it's a great example, isn't it? It's what people have been concerned about for a long time, and I guess this is probably one of the first sort of visual examples of probably that really doing what everybody's been worried about for quite some time. Admittedly, for a different demographic, though.
I think that's really it. So when you think about, what I'll be curious to look at is what the New Year's rush looks like this year. When you had this initial spike for joining gyms, you've had people having spikes to get onto these semaglutides. So are we going to be seeing a spike? Okay, I have a New Year's resolution. I'm going to sign up for my compounded GLP-1s, or are you going to join the gym? So I'll be watching out for that. But I agree. I think this could be something that is foretelling for what might come for the industry and how we have to treat the consumer.
Yeah, I've just found that article. It says Winfrey left the Weight Watchers board of directors in 2024, so fairly recently, after almost a decade, to avoid conflicts of interest. I suppose that market is obviously heavily focused around the extreme decondition where people will come in, but it's what will that look like? You can certainly see in the mind of a consumer that probably doesn't have the knowledge that many of the people that probably listen to this do are thinking, well, okay, gyms, that's where you go to lose weight. This loses weight. Don't need definitely definitely some work on sort of messaging that. If this example is anything to go by.
I would definitely agree with that. But on the other hand, too, there is more clinical research, there's more clinical data that is coming out that we didn't have before. So now that we've been on GLP-1s for about 3.5 years, since the weight loss benefits of GLP-1s are now aware. And I think that's an important point to know, right? GLP-1s.
But do you think the consumer gets that though, Mo? Like, obviously you and I, stay on top of it. But, do you really think my mum is going to be on top of that research, or is it just, sound bites and headlines and things that hit the news?
I think typically the discussions start with thought leaders, industry experts. Peter Attia recently did a new episode specifically on that and helping educate the benefits of GLP-1, but also what you need to do so that you're not on it for your entire life, how much you take and things like that. It's going to trickle down to consumers, but I do think it's going to take some time.
The wait is over. Our new Escape Fitness catalog has landed. This is the essential guide to all of the latest product innovations that are shaping the future of functional training. Bigger and better than ever, this year's catalogue is 190 pages, jam-packed with everything from eye-catching, bespoke functional training frames to some of the latest strength training equipment. So sign up today to receive the digital version today. So what are you waiting for? Go to escapefitness.com now.
I saw as well, just before we jump on that, there was, I think it might have been Peter Attia or somebody talking about now microdosing with GLP-1s, which was interesting. I didn't get to listen to the whole thing, but that could be quite interesting because, maybe just taking the edge off it, doing everything else as normal and slightly improving your diet. And I don't know the effectiveness of things like that, but yeah, certainly here to stay. It's just how do you sort of combat that for the average person that probably thinks they don't need to go to the gym?
Something that's really surprised me around GLP-1s, and we're all continuing to learn more, is that initially you think that it is acting like an appetite suppressant, and that's the primary purpose, but it's really more than that. There are chemical interactions happening all the way up in your brain, down to your liver, to your gut, to your pancreas, to your stomach. I mean, it is impacting a lot of systems within your body. And I think more and more research is coming out. On the positive, unlike a lot of other drugs, a lot of the research coming out is really proving to the efficacy of GLP-1, which I was surprised of. And initially, I was not fully supportive of it because we just didn't have enough data. But at least the recent research coming out has really been showing the efficacy of the prescription, and to your point, also a better way to use it. So I think we're really in the infancy stages of how this drug is going to be used, but I don't think it's going away anytime soon.
Well, the second story, which I was actually thinking about even trying GLP-1 as a reason, is I'm only joking, but the thought did pass my mind, is apparently if you're on GLP-1s, it also prevents you having this craving for alcohol. And I'm on my second month of no alcohol. And the story that we pulled up here is alcohol's healthy halo dims as a new study finds drinking may be harmful for older adults, even at low levels. I don't suppose there's anything necessarily new. I guess you had these stories about red wine and the fact that having a glass a day is good for you. I think the podcast with Andrew Huberman that he did towards the end of the year and subsequent information that's come out certainly says, no alcohol is ideal, and even one a day does quite a lot of damage. So, but the from what I've heard is having these GLP-1s just take your cravings away from all kinds of things. So, one thoughts on that, and also what's the what's the future for some of these drinks brands with people not consuming as much?
Well, there's no question that alcohol sales are reaching a slump. And at the same time, I think we covered this in a podcast a few episodes ago, but non-alcoholic beverages led by Athletic Brew is that right? Athletic Brew is actually really increasing in sales. So it's one of those news items, Matthew, that most of us that enjoy drink every now and then really don't want to hear. You're like, oh, don't tell me that. I really don't want to hear it. But it's the reality. You can't avoid it. I did not know you were on month 2 of no alcohol, because I think the last time we met, you were only going to do 1 month, so now you're doing 2 months, which is great. Recently, I've been reading a lot around red wine, and we read about resveratrol and the benefits that might have had, which is this ingredient in red wine, and then you find out that the amount that you have to consume to have a health benefit would make your stomach so sick that you would pass out. So you have to drink so much red wine to get any health benefit from resveratrol that it's not even going to provide any sort of good benefit to you. So ultimately, the truth, and again, just like we're learning more about GLP-1, so the more that we're learning about alcohol, is that no amount of alcohol is good for you. If you want to drink it as a social lubricant, maybe you could do that. But what's interesting, though, is that this new generation coming up, Gen Z, and the generation behind it, are finding other ways to get that social lubricant. And you and I recently were in Othership here in New York, and and it's messaging with Kevin Yates, who we both know. He went to Bathhouse when he was in New York last week. I think we're finding, at least for us in the wellness community, other ways of kind of creating a healthy social atmosphere. You've also seen the growth of mushroom type of drinks as well. So I think this downward trend of alcohol is going to continue. I don't think it's going to be as steep as tobacco, just because until we get labels that go on wine bottles that say that alcohol causes cancer, um, I just don't think that that's ultimately going to happen. But I do think that it's going to be consumed a lot less than what it used to be.
Mm. Yeah, on this report here, it says that particularly younger adults are the group that most likely say drinking is bad for health. 65% in that camp, compared to 37 of adults ages 35 to 55, and 39 of adults 55 and over. So it's definitely a change from the younger demographic. And I think, I know it's different in America than a lot of other countries around the world, but certainly you see a lot with when I was in New York. You're seeing cannabis stores now everywhere around downtown. Certainly in California, you see that a lot, which in some ways, obviously, there's the sort of psychological question mark, but from a general health benefit, if you don't have a lot of the damage to your body that you have with those types of substances. And I think the other one you mentioned, which is quite interesting, and there's a lot of a lot of great research around it, and I think it's legalized in a few parts of California, is mushrooms and psilocybin, where that certainly listening to a lot of podcasters now seem to say that that's a pretty interesting and social way of having that buzz, but without a lot of the effects of alcohol. So I certainly think if somebody could come up with a product that gave you some of the sort of subtle effects of alcohol, but without making you feel absolutely awful the day after, which is the main reason I stopped drinking, I think I'd certainly move over to an alternative pretty quickly, to be honest.
Well, if you also, I think one aspect that is not being talked about a lot is the growth of wearables. So when you look at when Fitbit first came out, everyone started seemingly walking more if you had a Fitbit. And we have
Yeah,
data
that's
to
right.
prove that and show that, right? Fitbit had this goal of 10,000 steps. It then built these communities where you were competing for steps with your mom and your colleagues and your friends and all that. And now, I mean, how many times have you looked at your Aura score before and after when you drink, right? Or people that have a Whoop, or any of these readiness trackers. And when you can quantify, something I've always believed is what is measured is managed. You always have to be careful around how much data you consume, because it could kind of be toxic to always be obsessed over your health data. But at the same time, if you see a correlation between one, not only how you feel, which is qualitative, but then you look at the number, which is quantitative, with wearables like Aura or Whoop, um, it just makes it top of mind. So before you have that
Mm.
drink or maybe two drinks, you're like, you know what? I'm going to rethink that decision, because I want to train in the morning, or I want to feel better tomorrow, or I have a big day at work tomorrow. So people are making more conscious decisions. And I do think that wearables are having a role in a lot of the alcohol consumption decisions that we're seeing today.
Yeah, definitely. That was a big driver for me and my wife, and also Kristen Holmes. I think it's Kristen, her name is, from Whoop. She's been doing some interesting stuff on social media now, about the correlation between alcohol and sleep and recovery, which is pretty fascinating. I recommend checking that out. But I think you're right. I think that was definitely a big big impact with me. Just having your Aura ring and realize how messed up your sleep is. And then you wonder, you sort of get to a Monday and you think, why am I tired on Monday? And because, you didn't stay up late, but you sleep.
And
So
so much of your wellness life should really be focused around sleep. If you make sleep your North Star, it almost like it doesn't matter what you have earlier in the day. In a lot of ways, it does not matter what happens before noon, as an example. But if you think about this, what happens after 4 p.m., if you go to bed, let's just say at 10 or 11 p.m., cut out your caffeine, cut out your alcohol, eat less carbs at night, drink a lot of water, and have some movement before your last meal. You will sleep great, right? So the answer to good sleep and being health, and then sleep is such an indicator for health as well. So if you think about that, if you focus a lot on sleep, again, don't get obsessive over it, it's going to lead to much better health outcomes. And that's a story you don't hear enough about, but I think you'll be
mm,
hearing more and more about.
interesting. Well, staying on the health tip, one of your favorites and my favorites is Athletic Greens is hitting the press again. I think it's a great story. Like whether it's a gimmick or not, I'm not sure. But Athletic Greens has partnered up with Starbucks. This article explains that they're doing a test in a few cities across the country where they're quietly unveiling a pair of drinks, one resembling a pistachio milkshake and the other one, what is it, like mossy sludge, and basically you can either have a shot of AG1 or you can have that added to a shake. I think it's probably with all the awareness of Athletic Greens, or AG1 as they call it now, on most of the sort of leading podcasters seem to have an association or an affinity with it. I think it's definitely a smart story. I think for Starbucks, probably kind of moves them into positioning them as with an element of health and appeal for that type of demographic. I personally don't really like Starbucks or their coffee. I think it sucks, to be honest. But if they had this and I didn't have my Athletic Greens for me, it may be a reason for me to go into Starbucks at the airport.
Well, now we know that Starbucks will not be coming on as a partner of that.
That's right.
But so in all seriousness, I have not been to a Starbucks in many years, right? For a lot of reasons. I love coffee at home. There's so many great coffee places where you and I both live. And I also thought that this was a national drink. So when I saw this happen, I think I was walking down Georgetown in Washington, D.C., and the Starbucks had the sign AG1 now at Starbucks. So when I tried it out, I went in and I tried it out. It actually wasn't too bad. It gave me some ideas for how to drink AG1 at home. Then I came to New York, and just this week I saw again AG1 at Starbucks. So I initially thought before preparing for this episode that it was a national release, but it turns out to be only a selective release. I think, look, what they're trying to do here is what you just said. You and I have not frequented Starbucks in probably many years. And even just to work, it's become noisy. It's not the same third space that it used to be, several years ago. But at least I have now gone in to try this new beverage, and it's reasonably priced. It is pretty refreshing and delicious. I think that's what they're trying to do. And then for AG1, it's getting the product in front of a very large group of consumers who might not otherwise know of it. So I think it's a good move by both groups.
Yeah. It is $7, so it's $7. So it's not, I guess it's not super cheap. They describe it on there's a Facebook post that describes it as a poor man's A1 smoothie.
It's all relative. You think about what a serving, and I guess we've never done the math, but I don't know what a serving of AG1 is, but I assume it's a couple of bucks to do that. So you compare that to how much a cup of coffee, making your own cup of coffee at home is, and what Starbucks charges you. I think the ratio between that is probably better for this AG1 drink than a cup of your venti latte that you're getting at Starbucks with all the sugar and junk in it.
Even though they did say that they some of them have got a little bit of sugar in, which is quite interesting. I did think that you didn't mix that kind of stuff in it when we had him on the podcast a few years ago, and I thought you just sort of best have it clean without anything. But maybe maybe they've updated how you take it now.
They have not, but it's also become a mainstream brand over the last couple of years. So I think there's look, getting AG1 or any kind of green in you, it's better than not having any of it. So there's arguments around optimal absorption and all of those things, but I'm just glad more people are going to have access to it.
Well, the final story is Greg Glassman's back in the news. He was the founder of CrossFit, and I think a few years ago he kind of left under a little bit of a cloud, and he's back with a new venture which is called MetFix, MET and I don't know too much about the story, but he certainly, and you and I exchanged a few texts about this yesterday, and whether you agree with what his exercise philosophy, and I know you've got some views on this, which I'll be keen to hear, but I think he certainly had a massive impact on the fitness industry, and I think he heavily influenced what people do in gyms, and heavily influenced people doing strength training, and heavily influenced a lot of even equipment brands that are here because of the of that particular trend. So I'm interesting to see what this MetFix idea.
Well, look, I'm always appreciative of anyone or anything or any product that gets people moving. We just talked about athletic greens having some sugar in it, being sold at Starbucks. Greg Glassman, I think, revolutionized Olympic lifting. Uh, Even gymnastics-based movements like walking handstands and other things because of CrossFit. In a lot of ways, what he did with CrossFit is the impact of that we're still feeling today. It's been transformative. I think it had a lot to do with the growth of strength, the education of strength, all of those things worldwide. So he overall had an incredibly positive impact for the industry, and I think, for working out in general, just for the fitness industry. But with that said, I mean, you have to take the good with the bad. At the same time, he would reference very specific science articles, and he would, talk about movements and doing things in a very prescribed way that might not be good for you. So for instance, we know that a hit workout, if you do that a lot, could really cause damage to your body. So you really have to understand how to kind of combine hard work with recovery and different type of movements. Same with nutrition. He kind of really prescribed to a very specific form of nutrition. He made paleo mainstream, and that was largely because of CrossFit. So what's changed between when CrossFit first really came into the market in the 2000s to today is social media and influencers. So what we did not have then is we didn't have Andrew Hubermans, the Peter Attias, right? All of these other, science-based, research-based wellness influencers, number one. We didn't have wearables, our own way to kind of search for things, AI tools and all that. So now he's coming out with MetFit, and again, there's very limited information available through it. Hopefully, he could still be transformative and have a really positive influence. This particular venture is focused more on nutrition, and it is taking, from what I've seen about it, an already trained and experienced and certified CrossFit certified coach and adding the nutritional element to it. What I'd be curious to find out is he going to take more of this, I'm going on a stretch here, but to say cult-like following, and really, right, almost have anyone follow what he's saying, and having prescribed meals and all of those things towards nutrition, or is it going to take more of a holistic, personalized approach? Because in a lot of ways, nutrition is more important. It's more complex. It needs to be more personalized. There's a lot more things that happen with nutrition that might happen with an actual workout. So I'd be curious to see, if he's adapted, his methods maybe. But either way, my hope is that he's going to have as big of an impact for nutrition as he did for strength and fitness.
I would say he must have still quite a bit of a following. I know he certainly divided the organization, and I don't think he probably had too much choice than to bow out when he did. And I think the world was in a kind of a strange place then as well. So timing of some of the things he said was probably not ideal. But I don't know what I've been trying to sort of find some of his social media profiles. So I don't know how big he is, what kind of following, and how active he is in that space anymore either. And do you follow him at all, or have you followed him?
I definitely follow him, and I think, largely because he's a name that the minute you say Greg Glassman, most people in our industry know who he is, and they know what he's done. No, I agree. The time when he exited, if memory serves me correctly, Matthew, was around a comment he made around the Black Lives Matter movement, I believe, and then
Mm.
he was already kind of being pushed out, but I think that was the final nail in the coffin. And yes, that was a result of cancel culture and all the things. And but either way, CrossFit was going through a really challenging and tough time. Anyways, he also went through a very public, personal divorce that also impacted CrossFit as well. So all the things that it just wasn't. He never scaled the organization with some of the governance that he needed to, and hopefully he learned from some of that and is able to do that with this new venture.
Well, that's it for this week. We got through quite a few news stories. What wondered if you had any takeaways. We didn't have the benefit of a guest to bounce off and have some time to think. So I'm certainly putting pressure on you now, Mo, for some genius takeaways that we can learn
Well,
from.
I've been thinking a lot about this predictions episode that we're going to be planning for the end of the year. I know last year's was a ton of fun, and I'm trying to go back and create a scorecard on what we were right about, what we were wrong about. But I'm having a lot of fun with that. I mean, one thing as a little preview, which I'm finding out is we talked a lot about AI, and we still continue to talk a lot about AI and its impact. We also talked a lot about GLP-1 and the differences which I'm seeing in both of them. And both of those were predictions that we made at the end of last year, saying that it would be impactful this year. But in reality, you could argue that GLP-1 had an enormous impact. It had an impact in the stock market. We talked about it with Weight Watchers today, the impact that it's having with gyms. It is having a massive impact on society. But AI is still being talked about. NVIDIA is still doing great. They're the third most valuable company. But when you look at the actual application of AI within our industry, it's been a little bit light. Like we personally have, I think, worked on just 3 AI projects this year, maybe 4, and I thought we might have worked on 20 as an example. We've done a lot more around strength and GLP-1 than we have around AI. So I just wonder if AI was a lot of talk initially, but it's struggling to find its ground. So that's something that I'm watching out for this last quarter of the year.
I think that's kind of a little bit like everything. There's a couple of interesting stories that we've spoke about. We'll use the Starbucks one as an example. I think nowadays you can test ideas and get something out very, very quickly on social media, where you can control the channel, the message, and create some sort of pop-up story without actually really committing to something in a huge way and spending a lot of money, which is great to test ideas. But on the other side, you then, I can imagine sort of people looking at a lot of these ideas, and then inevitably you have people that it's a little bit like Chinese whispers, where it gives somebody else an idea, and then suddenly you kind of see these mini ecosystems developing, and it's like, well, how did that happen? And is there really any substance to it? And it can just come from a few little ideas that have turned into something that probably shouldn't be there. And I see that with this. I've been following the Nvidia story, and although things have gone up and down, still a lot of people sort of think that that's quite a little bit overvalued for what they're actually delivering. And I obviously there's a lot of people and a lot of fantastic PR companies that have hyped that as an idea. But I'm just wondering, like everything, like the internet boom and many others, that there's going to be a settling down before you sort of reach this position where, one, you can understand what the actual size of the opportunity is, and then secondly, exactly how that really needs to relate to to what we're doing. And I think with AI, maybe it's going to sort of maybe it's going to be more like from a sales, from a marketing. Maybe there's other areas that's going to benefit probably our industry than the ones that might be instantly obvious today.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I do believe that we're finding our footing. So, well, we thought that 2024 is going to be the year of AI and GLP-1. Maybe it's just got pushed out to 2025, because I think there's a lot of strong applications, which we'll be talking about, even from agents to support to training tools and other things. So I think there's been a lot of POCs and experimentation, to your point, the trial and errors. We just have to piece it together. So I do believe it's going to happen. Yeah, I just don't think it happened yet. But I think
What
we
we
did
didn't
okay.
know, Mo,
Yeah.
what I think we didn't know is that probably L.I.F.T.S is going to be the first industry AI podcast. If you read the Google article that I sent you the other day.
I saw that, and thank you for sharing that with me. It's funny, you're sending me more tech stuff now than I sent you, and that's not how this got started. But no, Google Notebook, I mean, I went around and played with it, but it is remarkable. I mean, how that was able to create, a real life sounding podcast with content, with even the banter back and forth. That was like not something I expected, but this has been a lot of fun. We should do one of these with no more guests, but I have to head out and catch a train back to DC.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you've got any comments, or if you'd like to join on, if you've got an opinion, then go to the L.I.F.S page on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please share it with one or two people. Thanks for listening.